to take a moment to thank our Luncheon keynote sponsors. I want to thank Welltower, so Tom DeRosa, CEO, and Scott Estes, CFO, for your sponsorship. And again, those partnerships and sponsorships are so important for what it is that NIC does, and we sincerely appreciate your sponsorship of the keynote speaker. Thank you. So I want to introduce Paul Irving, who's chair of the Milken Institute Center for the Future of Aging. Paul is also a distinguished scholar of residence at the USC Davis School of Gerontology. He's on numerous boards. He's well published in the national media. He's also author of The Upside of Aging: How Long Life is Changing the World of Health, Work, Innovation, Policy, and Purpose. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Paul Irving. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I think the rule in Hollywood is you should never follow kids or animals, and I'm stuck following Bob Kramer. So bear with me. Yes. So I have a day job at the Milken Institute. I work at the USC Davis School, and I do various boards. But I would say the most important qualification I have to be here today is I am both a prospective customer and a current customer. I'm 65, by the way. I have a mother and a mother-in-law, both in their 90s, one in assisted living, probably one of the organizations that's here at lunch today, and one in skilled nursing. And their lives, in many, many ways, motivate my comments today. So some have said, by the way, this is my first time at the conference, and it's quite an amazing event, but some people have said to me, boy, we remember when it was so much smaller. I can't believe it's 3,000 people, how it's grown. And in a sense, it's not surprising to me. I travel the world. I just got back from Asia. There is such interest in products and services and innovations and opportunities relating to older adults. And you've been there for longer than virtually all. And what that means is that your knowledge and your insights should lead you to be able to not only do more to improve lives than most of the rest of these recent entrants, but also to capitalize on them in new ways. So I want to, by the way, again, echo the compliments to Bob, who has done an extraordinary job building this organization. But when Bob talked to me about coming to speak with you today, he said, say something about disruption, say something about innovation, say something about maybe how the industry should change. And one could ask, why? I mean, nothing's really broken. Obviously, demography is working remarkably in your favor and in the favor of those who are in your industry globally. A billion people over 60 now, and 2.1 billion by mid-century. Here's a map that shows the spread of the aging population across the world, and really net of sub-Saharan Africa, a little pocket of the Middle East, a couple little pockets in Latin America. The entire world is aging, and so the things you do are being discussed in boardrooms and in policy centers across the world every day. We know that the US population is aging as well. Here's the growth of the 65-plus population over the next number of years. So because I spend some time at an academic institution, I know there's some others in the room, I'm not going to let you get away without a pop quiz today, just to make sure that you're paying attention. So let's read this question. In 1917, King George V sent a congratulatory birthday telegram to every citizen of the British Empire who was at least 100 years old. He sent telegrams to 7 men and 17 women. At 91, Queen Elizabeth has a larger group to congratulate. So do you know how many centenarians there are in the UK today? Let's see a show of hands. How many think that there are 1,000? 3,000? Not many. This is an expert group. 5,000. A few 5,000s. 15,000? You know the answers. And 30,000, the correct answer is, I don't know why I'm going backwards here, but the correct answer is 15,000. By the way, the population's aging rapidly in the UK, but nothing like in China, or nothing like in Japan. In Japan, when a citizen reaches the age of 100, the prime minister sends them a silver bowl. In 1963, 153 centenarians. Today, the number is 32,000 every year, more than 60,000 in total in Japan. And of course, what we know is advances in longevity science present the prospects for much, much longer lives. So I observed at an earlier session today, your industry, your business has the challenge not just of ethnic diversity and racial diversity and preference, changing consumer preferences, generational challenges, but in this room, you are serving 6 decades from the 55-plus communities, the 50-year-olds that AARP identifies as aging to centenarians, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and those over 100. How does one address such a complex group? But demography very much in your favor. This prospect of the longevity economy, you can see what S&P says about the prospects. This is the AARP Oxford economics definition, that is products, services, innovations, related economic activity for those 50 plus. In the United States today, the number is 7.6 trillion, the third largest economy in the world measured by GDP. If it was a separate country, Bank of America Merrill Lynch says the number is 20 trillion. We're coming up on, they use 60 years old as the cutoff point. And by the way, what we know is the surface has barely been scratched. We have a deficit of interest across much of corporate, not just corporate America, but the corporate world in creating new products and services. What if we actually address those needs? We have a high concentration of wealth in the communities you serve. And so this is another thing that bolsters opportunity for you to continue to provide high-level services to this range of people. And of course, this is what NIC itself says about the state of seniors housing. And one can argue, some have talked about a little gap in use, gap in interest between the silent generation and the baby boom generation. But in general, the trends are incredibly powerful. We already know that a significant portion of the older population is a customer of yours, but we also know that many more present that prospect. And again, this is data that you have seen, showing the prospects for continued growth in the industry. And obviously investors are getting it. I've heard today about the number of capital providers that have shown up, and what we see is increasing interest from new sources of capital. By the way, not just capital interested in real estate, but interested in operations, innovation, technology, and other things that relate to your business. So nothing's broken, right? I guess, should we just call this talk a day and move on? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. As John Chambers said, the now just retired executive chairman of Cisco Systems, companies fail because they keep doing the right thing for too long, and that they must disrupt their businesses or be disrupted by others. So what do we know about some of the disruptions that you're confronting? One is that in my generation, people want to age in place, and that's defined principally as one's home. It's defined to an extent by community as well, but what we know is the home is your biggest competitor, and unless you provide a compelling alternative to the home, that home is going to become a more and more successful competitor. Here's the original Sun City. Don't know whether we have anyone from Del Webb here, but of course Del Webb created this really brilliant post-war idea, marketed it well. The day it opened, by the way, I think it was the weekend of January 1, 1960, a couple days, 100,000 people showed up because they bought this notion. They believed in it. This is what they wanted. They found it compelling. But guess what? Configured today, I don't. and many, many people like me don't. And if you don't figure out a way to reinvent the sun cities of the world, 100,000 people won't be showing up the next time one opens. Retirement norms are changing for baby boomers. Baby boomers want to continue to work and need to continue to work. They need to continue to work for financial security. They want to continue to work for ongoing challenge and meaning and purpose. And that presents, again, the prospect for longer lives at home. My friend David Bornstein says, and I always love this quote, retirement and disengagement should be packaged with a warning label saying this is something you may not want to consume. So the traditional notion of kind of 65 and out, or in some cases younger and out, to a place with a rec center and a golf course and a cafeteria and kind of a slow period of decline is inconsistent with the aspirations of the generations to come. And the question is, how are you engaging with that generation? By the way, just out of curiosity, show of hands, how many millennials are in this room today? Not many, and there need to be more, because they are your future customer, by the way, the largest population, the largest generation now in the United States, and Gen Z well behind them. This is something else that's going to affect you. I come from California, a majority-minority state, but across the United States, in high schools today, a majority of the population are people of color. That's not going to be negatively impacted by changing immigration standards and a whole series of political conversations that are going on in Washington, D.C. That's a reality. And part of that reality is that culturally, in these communities, there is a greater propensity to living with family. I would also say, and by the way, I asked Brian this question before, what is the representation of color at this conference and on the board and of those involved with NIC and in the leadership of your various organizations? So think about this kind of intersection of generational change, preference change, by the way, change in other factors, and very much change in race and ethnicity. Now, another challenge that we know exists is the challenge of financial security. Unfortunately, as a result of the change in retirement plans, pensions, the move away from DB plans, defined benefit plans, to defined contribution plans and the like, pre-retirees are not in terrific shape. Homeowners are more likely to be able to afford your business. Renters are not. And very, very sadly, a huge portion of the population age 60 plus finds itself tremendously financially challenged. And of course, we have all the current debates about reimbursement, payment, and the like that affect your industry. One of the things that I know is a huge challenge in this industry is a labor shortage, is a shortage of talent. And frankly, talent defines the success of every business. This is true in technology, it's true in financial services, it's true throughout the health industry. So how do you attract and retain and create meaningful lives and meaningful careers for your employees? And of course, you know the issues of press scrutiny. I mean, unfortunately, most of you are wonderful, successful, ethical, caring operators. But that's not true throughout the industry, and one just has to think about the implications of the Florida story a couple weeks ago and how that might stimulate excitement among state attorneys general, the press, and others. And your business is trust. Your business is about trust. The home, again, is the challenge of the future. Now, some people think in this industry, and I would agree to an extent, technology represents an opportunity. It represents an opportunity for enhanced care. It represents an opportunity for increased knowledge and knowledge sharing about your residents, potentially reduced cost, and a range of other things. But I actually believe that it represents a greater threat, and the threat is enabling people to live at home longer and live more independently. So what we see is a series of home-based solutions, and what we know is from telehealth to voice technology to care bots at home, by the way, prevalent now in Japan and coming quickly to your local community. These are ways that people can avoid moving in unless they aspire to, and that's kind of my ultimate point. Transportation, obviously changing. We've reached a point where we don't have to take the keys away from mom and dad. They can now through ride-sharing, ride-hailing services. We know that Lyft is actively involved in this. Uber taking a greater interest. Get to their doctor. Get to cultural associations. Get to opportunities for lifelong learning, and of course, how quickly we've gone from this to that to this, the autonomous car that's going to create more opportunity for people, again, to live at home and to get to where they need to be. Retailing, which is, I think, very much a model for you. Think of what's going on in the shopping center space. Think of what's going on in the conventional retailing space. Completely being disrupted, right? So virtually everything can get to your home these days, and a drone is coming very, very soon. So, robots. So we're not all going to have robots tomorrow, but again, the point simply is that these things are moving very rapidly. And I think one of the mistakes that oftentimes people make is they think that progress happens in some kind of simple, planned, linear fashion. Things change arithmetically, but history has shown us that that's rarely the way things change. When things are disrupted, they're disrupted very quickly. And again, we were having a conversation earlier at our table about the changes in retailing. The shopping center business has been completely disrupted by Amazon just in the last couple of years. So the question is when these amenities start to be readily available, relatively inexpensive, easy to operate, voice activated, comfortable for older adults with better designs. Those things are being thought about now in the Silicon Valley. Accepted by children, by adult children who may be helping mom and dad make choices. Will they make the move? So I want to say something that I suspect you wouldn't expect out of me, and that is that maybe the thing to think about, maybe the thing to capitalize on is not trying to beat the technologists at technology. Maybe not being the most advanced thinker, maybe being leading followers in that regard, but by doing something that you can uniquely do. And that is, by the way, something that machines are likely to do last. Connection, empathy, and engagement. What we know is that social isolation may be the greatest health risk to older adults of all. It's equivalent to smoking cigarettes. These days we always say that sitting is as dangerous as smoking. We know that it has impacts as dramatic as bad diet and lack of exercise. And you have communities, you have campuses, you have places to be, places where people bump into each other and have the opportunity for engagement. You have the opportunity to provide purpose for your residents. And what we know is the opportunity to develop a meaningful life, to realize purpose is incredibly powerful medicine. The first dot there, which comes from research by Becca Levy of Yale, suggests that people who have a positive self-image of aging, the kind of thing that you can do by changing atmospheres, can add 7.5 years to life. Rush Medical Center here in Chicago, Patricia Boyle did this research that suggests that the symptoms of Alzheimer's and other dementias can be deferred by 2.4 years if people have this sense of purpose in their lives. Much of this, I think, associated with, again, this notion of connection, learning, contribution, ongoing challenge. So I won't go through these in detail, and by the way, the slides are available afterwards if you want. But the point is that having that physical place to be is powerful competition. So how do you get to the point where maybe at my age or maybe a little bit older, somebody says in the way that a 17-year-old may say, I want to go off to college, or a 9 or 10-year-old may say, I want to go off to camp, that I say, boy, my aspiration is to live in one of your communities. I think you have the ability to do that, and others are. So just some examples. LaSalle Village in Newton is this really interesting place where people not only have the opportunity for lifelong learning, and you may know about it, but they're required to go to school at least so long as they're in the independent living portion of the campus. And again, intense sense of purpose and engagement, ongoing challenge. A little bit of stress is not a bad thing. They've got homework. The outcomes are incredibly positive. Treehouse, where there's been this kind of re-envisioning of the physical environment. The older adults involved in cooking and caring for each other and all the rest. It's not just a service function, it's an engagement and community function. Oh, I'm sorry, that was Treehouse is this amazing thing. Judy Chatterton, a woman started it in Massachusetts. There are a couple other examples now in which older adults are matched with foster kids. And the outcomes, by the way, for both cohorts, both the foster kids and the older adults are truly extraordinary. The foster kids improved academic performance, lower truancy rates, better mental health, and for the older adults, much better health outcomes. And I spoke a little bit about Greenhouse. Judson Manor, this is another one where I'm going to show you a video in a minute. Older people living with young people who are musicians, and again, the opportunity for these incredibly rich relationships to develop. Now, none of these are scaled, frankly, and I recognize that there may be financing challenges and all the rest, but I would contend that the next generation in your industry is not going to be about real estate. Please, the real estate financiers, don't shoot me. It's going to be about operations and innovation and this notion of connection. Those are going to be the differentiating characteristics. And by the way, very different businesses, very different skill sets. It's been recognized, obviously, in the hospitality business, real estate and operations. I think very likely to be more thought about in yours. This is happening internationally too. Humanitas, this is again an intergenerational program. Wonderful in Holland, in Finland, A Home That Fits. Similar kind of thing. And in Singapore, what they're doing, by the way, both by way of policy and private initiative, is encouraging young people across this still relatively small city-state of 5 million or so to engage with older people, and the benefits, again, for both generations are wonderful. Hagaway, many of you know the famous dementia village. This is kind of akin to the Jim Carrey movie. They've created this environment which is not real, but which very much represents the interests and the aspirations and the familiarity of the residents with what they do. It has a market that they go into and with no charge, et cetera. Again, for these customers, for those who are involved in memory care, for example, a really interesting and innovative idea. So here's some just for you to take a look at.
This intergenerational community approach is a very exciting way to be serving children and to be asking regular citizens, ordinary citizens, to step up to the plate.
America doesn't seem to have that usually, a place for grandparents and children to come together. Here we've got it. I mean, this is really an ideal community. Everything about it is what the whole world should be. You know, a small community of people who really care about each other.
To have my mother-in-law here is the next best thing to being at home.
I'm waiting to get a cup of coffee.
It almost looks like you're walking into a living room, and there's always someone cooking. It's more of a very homey, warm setting.
The goal is a complete transformation of the way we currently deliver skilled nursing care. So we want to move from an institutional setting, the setting that when you or I walk into it, we think, please don't ever let me have to live here. And how to transform that into something warm and to create a home that you or I would walk into and think, I'd be happy living here.
We don't have a nursing station. We have a little small area that we work out of in the library. We could provide just as good care, if not better, here because we know them so well.
This is my friend Laura, and she's 80 years old.
And this is my friend Tiffany, and she is 26.
And we live in a retirement community. I'm a part of the Artist in Residence program at Judson Manor, which is a residential program where young musicians get to live here rent-free in exchange for performing recitals and concerts.
I had not been a part of this community more than 2 days. I was in the lobby and they told me about Tiffany, and I walked over and introduced myself and I said, "Do you like dogs?" "Oh, she loves dogs." And Tiffany and I became friends. We just formed a friendship. We'll talk about art. We talk about clothes. I don't wear fashionable shoes anymore, but Tiffany does, and we talk about shoes.
Laura to me is like a grandma and also a friend and a confidant. I don't think the age difference is something that I am constantly thinking about or that I'm aware of. I'm having dinner with my friend Laura and Sarah. In a way, it is almost like being in a college dorm with the fact that there are so many people here from different places, from different backgrounds. It might be a little bit quieter than a normal college dorm, but I think we still have just as much fun.
So these are just a few examples, but I think they make the ultimate point, which is the future is about this kind of connection. And again, it can be manifested in intergenerational programs and learning programs and ongoing opportunities to work, but somehow these have got to be integrated in your offerings for you to have the vitality and vibrancy and ongoing growth that I know you seek. And again, the competition is the home. So the question is, how can you compete against that home and provide something, a community, that people aspire to live in? So by the way, if you're interested in some of the research on this question of purpose, we have a report that we did last year, which I'd welcome any of you to ask me about, or you can find it online. You know, the notion of purpose, by the way, applies for all of us. Here's Mick Jagger saying, "I'd rather be dead than singing Satisfaction when I'm 45," and there's Mick at 74. He's still doing it. So I just want to raise one thing that will certainly be controversial with this group, and that is that you talk about yourselves as being in the seniors housing business, and that is kind of the core definition for the future of NIC. A year ago, a little bit less than a year ago, a group called Frameworks Institute issued a report on branding, on vocabulary. And this was commissioned by AARP, ASA, GSA, GIA, various other organizations that focus on aging and older adults. And here was a finding. This is not mine, this is Frameworks. And what they found is they found that older people hate the word senior. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to change your businesses tomorrow, but I think what it does speak to, and by the way, what we find is that there's even more generational challenge associated with this, that you're more likely to find acceptance in the silent generation than you will among baby boomers, more among baby boomers than you will among Xers, and more among Xers than you will among millennials. If this represents kind of as a metaphor for the challenge that you face in reimagining, redefining your business in the public imagination, what does it mean? Is it a place to go and deteriorate and survive and be safe and secure? Is that the aspiration? Or is the aspiration a better life, a new life, ongoing engagement, new challenges, the possibility that the last chapter is just as stimulating, just as interesting, has just as much possibility as earlier chapters of one's life? So I commend at least thinking about this question, what you call yourselves, but I also commend thinking about how you frame the offering for the coming generation. And again, remember, as I said at the beginning, I'm a customer. You're showing me today what you offer because I have the mother and the mother-in-law living in NIC members. And the question is, what will turn me on? By the way, I would also say choice and diversity of interest. In an earlier session I was involved in, there was one proposal about, in a sense, playing. It's the Margaritaville kind of notion, kind of graying as playing all day long and having the opportunity to have this kind of hip, fun, Fort Lauderdale, 24 hours a day, 365-day-a-year experience. And that might be of great interest to some, and it's of no interest to me. But the point is that I'm not suggesting that my choice is better or that my inclinations are better. I'm simply saying that rather than homogenizing older adults, which so often happens, by the way, out there, and again, not among you, you understand the nuances and the distinctions, but for so many people, it's ageist. It's a reflection of a lack of understanding of the variations in older adults. Those same variations need to exist in the future of housing options. So we have a few minutes, and I would welcome some questions, and I think we have a mic that can come around the room. I'll just leave you with this. Andy Grove, the co-founder of Intel, a company that's been disrupted now several times. Success breeds complacency, complacency breeds failure. And then John Gardner, the great John Gardner, who founded Common Cause and Experience Corps and PBS, and who was secretary of HEW before it was HHS. We are continually faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems. This industry, this sector, has more potential to change the world than any other sector that is now kind of entering slowly into this, whether it's technology or entertainment or a full range of consumer products. You understand your customer, you understand your client, you've been there. You have the ability to export your knowledge into the community. You have the ability to extend your brands into the home. Are you asking yourself those hard questions and doing all the things you can to reach what's potentially a very bright future, but a very challenging one?